Before I became a prosecutor, what I knew about domestic violence came solely from movies and television. I remember after-school specials, commercials for courtroom dramas, and made-for-TV movies, all of which formed my opinion about what a domestic violence victim sounded and looked like. And the portrayals that I grew up with were not complex pictures of how trauma affects people. The women tended to be shrinking violets who would burst into tears whenever talking about their abuse. It was dramatic, and maybe it made for good television, but it was definitely an oversimplification of how trauma manifests. I vividly remember a movie that I saw as a teenager called A Cry for Help, the Tracy Thurman story. The lead actress was Nancy McKeon, who was one of my favorite actors at the time because of her tomboyish character Jo on The Facts of Life. And the movie was a true story. It was based on the life of Tracy Thurman. She was a woman who tried to leave her husband several times and sought help from her local police department in responding to incidents of violence and violations of an order of protection. But she didn't get the help that she needed. And she was later brutally attacked by her husband, an attack which left her partially paralyzed. Tracy Thurman sued her local police department for failing to protect her, and the successful civil suit is credited with bringing reforms to training for police officers and prosecutors in how they respond to domestic violence incidents. But again, this movie cemented my thoughts on how and why a victim seeks help. They call the police because they want to leave their abuser. But in actuality, sometimes survivors call 911 because they want help in that moment. In their mind, they may not be calling 911 because they want the abuser arrested or even because they want a criminal prosecution. On average, it takes 7 times before a victim leaves an abuser. So when police get involved, they are already dealing with someone who has been the victim of multiple traumatizing incidents. There's another statistic from a victim support organization in the UK that states on average a woman will have been assaulted 35 times before ever calling the police. So someone who has been the victim of multiple traumatizing events may not be a shrinking violet. They may not cry at all. They may have no affect. They may be hypervigilant. They may laugh nervously. They may be angry. Understanding trauma is essential to doing the work of protecting victims. When I was a prosecutor, it affected how I conducted interviews, how I investigated, how I prepared for trial. For example, when preparing to pick a jury, I had to make sure that any prospective jurors understood domestic violence dynamics and that I disabused them of any preconceived notions that they might have before hearing the evidence in the case. But most importantly, understanding trauma affected how I built trust with survivors. So if they were ever in danger in the future, they didn't think twice about calling 911 and seeking safety. So I'm eager to share what I have learned in investigating and trying domestic violence cases with social workers, advocates, law enforcement, and anyone engaged in the work of combating gender-based violence. So please, let's work together to use our collective knowledge to better protect victims. Please visit the Contact Me page at Velez, VELEZ, consultingllc.com to get more information about trainings on trauma-informed practices. Thank you.